OMG, I had so much fun with Rose in this conversation. I don't mean like fun, like, oh, what giggle. It's like very nerdy and geeky about the distinctions of community, which is a word. I'm going to let you get in there. Rose describes it so well, like what the job the word community has to do nowadays. And we make a distinction of, or Rose makes a distinction of village versus community. And how, I think this is really important, like how lurking is okay. You don't all have to be jacked up and participating in community, or even providing a space that is a multi-participatory community thing, which is different from citizenship, but we'll get to that later. And I never get tired of this conversation. Like, it's essential how you act with intent when you're building your community, whether that is a co-working space or some other place. And then we get into that, the ever-evolving third space conversation. And my deepest desire, and I'm not the only one, and I got it from other people, is for a co-working space to be a multi-purpose third space. And we continue that here with Rose. So don't forget to get to the show notes afterwards. We have so much fun making them, and I hope you enjoy and get magic out of this conversation with Rose. Hello, folks, wherever you are in the world. It is the Co-working Values Podcast, and we can't afford a jingle. Anyway, today in the studio is Rose. Rose, what are you known for, and what would you like to be known for?
Hi, Bernie. I'm actually a bit of an octopus. I am a brand strategist, I'm a writer, and I'm a community manager. So I kind of straddle all three of those things, and I love it because there's a lot of links between all three of them.
There are a lot of links, but what would you like to be known for? You weaseled out the question.
Oh, what would I like to be known for? I'd like to be known for being a real a connector, being someone that's really smart and that connects people up in interesting ways.
I'd like to be known for that too, you know.
Yeah, whether I can get there, I don't know.
I think it's always a work in progress. I want to segue into this because there's this. We can't have another like boil with the ocean on community, but as we were talking before we came on, like that word, that fucking word. What?
Mm-hmm.
Where? I'm going to open it like this. Where's your head with the word community in 2026 after all you've been through?
Okay, so community is a really irritating word to me right now. It's always been a word that when I first got into community and I got in through the lens of branding, I was like branding communities. I found it really fascinating, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a lovely word. I love it. I love this whole vibe around it. And actually, I think over the last, I'd say 6 to 8 years, it is just, we ask it to carry too much. It's such a stretchy word now. And, you know, everything's a community. We want everything to be a community, and it just carries an awful lot. It's load is very, very heavy. And I think we need to go back to thinking about whether we are running communities, or actually whether we have audiences, or whether it's what we're cultivating is more of a village. I think there are big differences between those three things.
Do you think, to what extent do you think it's a word people use and they don't, even people like us, it's all about the community, and we kind of assume everyone understands what we mean, but it's a bit like I'm going out to eat, and that could be a doner kebab or the Ivy, you know. I'd go for the doner kebab.
I'd go for the doner kebab any day. Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's a buzzword, isn't it? Community is a buzzword, and people are getting really tired of it and a bit like icked out by it, I think, in some cases. But some things are communities, and I think community as a word applies really well to co-working, actually. Having thought about it quite a lot recently, one of the things that I think is unique to a community is that or a community as it is now, as it's known now, is participation is optional. So if you're a part of a community, you can either be a lurker, and being a lurker is, it's an option. It's fine, and you can absorb what you're reading and seeing and the conversations you're overhearing or kind of eyeing up. But then you can fluidly move into being a participant. And my understanding of community has always been, ever since I got obsessed with community, which was probably about 6 years ago now, my understanding of the linchpin of community was participation. Participation is absolutely crucial if you're going to have a community rather than an audience. But I think in co-working, you don't have to participate. A lot of people do want to get out of their house in the morning, leave behind the mess, leave behind the bowls of half-eaten Rice Krispies, and go and work somewhere clean and tidy and get their head down and leave at the end of the day and go home and get back on with life. And that's absolutely fine and valid. And other people really want to get out and go and network and see people, and they want to go to a place where people know their name, and they want to be part of that program and learn stuff, and they want to be all in, and both are valid. And I think that is really that's a kind of illustrative of a community rather than a village where everyone's participation is needed. Everyone has a role. In a village, you kind of, there's an expectation of care that you extend to each other, and everyone has their part to play, even if that's just that you take your rubbish out on the right day to be collected. You have to participate. And I think that's the big difference. Can't remember your original question now. Sorry, went off on a tangent.
I should write them down so I know I can come back to it. But I find that really thought-provoking, because I am I was going to say I'm thinking about this, but that sounds a bit, that's bigging myself up a bit. We're having this whole citizenship conversation in the London Coworking Assembly, and I think in my 700 years in the co-working industry, there's all these different things I've tried, and I've run so many this is what community is kind of things, which I really believed in at the time. But I think, as you indicated, it evolves. COVID just, what's your experience of COVID? How do you think that affected our generic public understanding of community?
I think that COVID was a huge turning point in community, because community went online. So, and it was huge. It was had we not had online communities, COVID would have been a very different thing, and it would have been really, communities were lifelines for people in COVID, and most of those communities were online. And I think we've never quite come back from that, and that's fine. Online communities are just as important and valid as in-person communities, but they're very different. But I do think that is where we piled a lot on the word community during COVID. That is where it all became a bit stretched and misshapen, and we asked it to carry a lot more than it can probably handle.
I really like the way you say that. I'm actually a bit upset that I didn't come up with that myself. We asked it to carry a lot. It's a very, sounds a bit TED talky, but it's a very accurate description. You know, this poor word that is, you know, used to be community centre, which meant some like jammy Dodgers and a broken pool table or something, and now it's all this other stuff going on. It's like,
Yeah.
I was going to say a very complicated word there that I can't. I think there was, I use this example a lot. There's a mate of mine, and I was working with him in his co-working space, and it wasn't open yet. So we were trying to open it. And there was like 2 people in the building and me and him. And he's like, oh, so, you know, say it was called, you know, Rose Co-working. It was like, you know, Rose Co-working. And you would say like, oh yeah, people will come because of the community. I was like, but there's no one in the building. But it's the community that makes it. But like, you know, you need people in the building. So if a lot of AC/DC fans turn up, it's going to go one way. And if a load of like Buddhist monks turn up, it's going to go another way, isn't it? It's like, it's not, you know, you haven't got a community to, I nearly said market there, which is like the worst thing, isn't it? You know, you haven't got a community to market. See how easily that came out of my mouth?
I think, yeah, and I think that's really interesting as well. I think now more than ever, we're having to engineer community because, yeah, as you said, communities in the past were, or community spaces were village halls, or there were the pub, or, you know, and the people that gathered there tended to have share the same sort of experiences or views or ideas. And yeah, the community would be driven by the members. Whereas now we've got, as you say, we've got these co-working spaces that tend to start really as a brand, or they start as an idea, then comes the brand, then comes the community. And when you look at it, when you do things that way around, you kind of have to, it's necessary to engineer the community to a certain extent. And that's kind of, it can be fine. Because then you attract the kind of people that you want in that community. But it also means that your branding and your marketing and your community have to kind of work as one for it to work. Otherwise, your community just isn't going to happen. So, yeah, I think it's fine if we just accept that, and we just accept that that is what community is now in co-working. Cool, that's fine, because things change, times change, people change. And so for a long time I was like, no, that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. We need to safeguard community. We need to get it back to what it really, the real meaning of it. But maybe that is the real meaning of it now. I don't know. Does that make any sense? It needs to change.
In podcast, how can I say no? It'll be really awkward. It does make sense, but let me chuck this out, and then you are more than welcome to disagree with me or counter argument me. I think that I have found, that over the years, not the best types of co-working spaces, but my favorite types of co-working spaces have been started by people who were kind of scratching their own itch. So, the Skiff, John and Anna at the Skiff in Brighton, Fernando and Anna, everyone's called Anna in this. Fernando and Anna at Co-working Lisboa in Lisbon, and then Jeff and Alex in Indie Hall, which is about 2,000 years old now, and I can go on forever. There's all these people who started something that they needed, and then they had some extra space, so they built this space around what they were doing. And then there's people like I can't remember Seb in who started Platform 9. Like he didn't go like, oh, I really need somewhere to work. He's like, I'm going to start this Platform 9 thing, and he did it really, really well. And but the way he opened Platform 9 is very different from the way John and Anna opened the skiff. So there's, and I certainly don't mean like there's an evil intent. And, you know, if it was a bigger, nastier company, I'd go with that. But yeah, their intention was different.
Yeah, I think that's it. And so the community is formed around their intention, effectively, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So like, you know, John and Anna and Fernando and Anna, whatever happened, the way the community formed around what they did, because they, you know, they attracted kind of designery solo businesses, people who probably were a bit too much into SEO in Brighton, you know, that kind of vibe. And then if your building is as big as Platform 9 when it was opened, everyone, you know, it was, when that opened, it wasn't quite as mainstream, but like the way to make a building like that profitable and, you know, a sustainable business is to have offices, and you sell all the offices, and then people like you and me that are freelancers kind of bring the energy on desks. So the dynamic, if you like, is different.
Yeah. This is a little bit of a segue, but have you noticed that, do you think co-working spaces seem to be struggling a bit more this year? There's a few indicators that make me think that this could be the case. Mainly that there seems to be, as I've noticed, a kind of shift towards more flexible spaces offering more flexibility. So like lower hour memberships, flexible memberships, and maybe this is because people are wanting sort of more flexibility in their lives. They don't want to be tied down. But I also wonder whether spaces are struggling a little bit more to make ends meet. Yeah,
definitely. So somewhere near this podcast is a podcast with Tom Ball from Desk Lodge, and he talked about his pricing. Link in the show notes, folks. And he's got, so you can buy. I haven't got it in front of me, so I'm going to have to wing it. But so something that works well for me, we have a home office, and you know, but I also want to go to a co-working space because I, you know, want to meet other human beings. So buying a block of days works really well for me. And then he's got this thing where if you buy a block of days, you can then, and you go over those days, you can get a better deal on getting more days. So it's very, very flexible. And I think out of all the people I've seen, he's nailed it for the time being. And other people are trying things. So there's places I've worked with, and they're like, oh, we should do like, I don't know, they come up with these crazy pricing strategies that are really exhausting for people like us to like, do I want to do that? Do I want to do that? And I hate to use, it's a cliche example, but when Apple went, you can either buy this computer or this computer, it all worked because you couldn't work out which thing you needed. Whenever I go to a Dell website, which make great computers, I don't know which one I need. Whereas, you know, I keep buying the same Apple computer year after year because I know it works. So you know this, sorry, I don't know why I'm explaining the paradox of choice to you, but you know,
it's very useful for the listeners as well.
Thanks for pointing that out. There's so when you go to a listeners, when you go to a co-working space website and there's like 57 different things because 40 different people have given you 57 different options and you put them all on your website, that exhausts you, that exhausts your accounting system, and it exhausts the buyer trying to work out which one they need. And something I meant to ask you about 10 minutes ago was in terms of like how people use spaces and what community means in air quotes. What's the, you know, do you feel, you don't have to come with data, but like, do you feel there's a big difference between London and Brighton because of the different types of cities there are?
I've noticed there are a few other things that I've noticed that I don't know whether there's a difference between London and Brighton or if this is just sort of nationwide. I've noticed a trend towards spaces becoming like the lines becoming blurred between workspace and third space in co-working spaces. So like spaces are becoming much more multi-use. So for instance, they might at the weekend become a pop-up market or a supper club, or they'll have a cafe that the public can use. And I wonder, and that's very popular in Brighton. I think like pop-up markets in general are really trendy right now, so that might be one of the reasons. But I think spaces seem to be able, like co-working spaces seem to be, or the smart ones, and this is what I aspire to do as a community manager. I want to create reasons for people to stay beyond their work day, or if they're not working, for them to come in anyway, and ways to make additional revenue as well. I think that's really smart, and it's really good to be able to offer opportunities for non-members to come in and use the space in different ways, and maybe discover it as a workspace as well. A lot of the time someone might pop up into a market that's happening, a vintage flea market or whatever that's happening on a Saturday, and be like, oh, I've never been in here before. Oh, look, it's also a co-working space. Maybe I'll check that out, and boom, you've got a new member.
Definitely.
So I think that's really interesting. I also think it's interesting that there's a lot of kind of other third spaces that seem to be adding co-working. So like cafes and bookshops and gyms, and David Lloyd is a really obvious one. We all know about David Lloyd offering workspace, and I think by all accounts it's quite corporate, the feel of it. But you can go to the gym, you can pay for 2 hours of childcare in their creche, and you can do some work upstairs, and then you can go and have your lunch in the cafe. And I think that kind of almost being able to plan your day around one space is becoming important to people. Maybe because people's time is more precious now, not more precious, but more pressured. And yeah, I think being able to kill two birds with one stone is very appealing to people nowadays. And I mean, Kemptown Book, you don't live in Brighton, do you? But there's a gorgeous bookshop in Brighton called Kemptown Bookshop, and I noticed the other day that they've just added a co-working option, so you can pay for a desk for the day, and it's in the cafe. You're sitting in the cafe, but it's lovely. It's really, really lovely. And then they've got people coming in, using the space, probably buying some drinks, buying maybe some lunch, probably pick up a book, and it makes so much sense. And that's what I'm kind of loving that at the moment. Like, I'm looking for spaces as for opportunities as a co-working manager, as a community manager. I'm looking for opportunities to make that happen. Like, I'm really interested at the moment in hospitality. Well, I've always been interested in hospitality. I'm a hospitality nerd, but I'm really interested in whether or why hospitality venues don't have community managers. I feel like that's madness. Like, if I was running a pub and I wanted to be really successful, I'd probably hire someone part-time to be a community manager, to create a really great program, to go around and survey all the local residents and be like, what do you want from this space, to to bring in all the clubs from around the area, the book clubs and the chess clubs and everything. Be like, hey, we're here. Look, we're going to facilitate this. This is a lovely space you can use. We want you in here. And you can really make it multi-use. I just think that's a really interesting and exciting space at the moment, kind of, or sort of place to be as a community manager. Multi-use spaces.
I think with as you were saying, that role, like having a community manager in a hospitality venue is that would have been like sales and marketing but then like the person who has that job title is a very different headspace. Like probably, when you began this podcast, you were like, I'm doing this, this, and this, and you said there's a crossover between brand and community and stuff, and it absolutely is. It's like communication. It's the co in communication. But but now you're not selling your space. You need to like attract, like so many things I go into. People are like obsessed with lead generation, which, you have to have leads in order to sell things. Absolutely. But their mindset is so embedded in acquisition rather than, community building. They end up kind of shooting themselves in the foot. So yeah, and going back another paragraph in lockdown, our gym in sunny Ilford had this cafe in this huge space. You could have parked 2 transit vans in the space they weren't using in the cafe. And I kept on saying to the manager, you should get some desks in there, because I would have like gone to the gym, sat down, probably stayed there for two hours working, brought their, very overpriced rocket and avocado salad with a green juice, and it would have worked. And he could see it, but the people that ran it didn't think they could put desks in a cafe for people to work at. It wouldn't have been ideal, but we would have made it work.
Yeah, it would have been ideal for a lot of people, including them, because they would have made, it works for everyone. I think, and I think back then it wasn't like the done thing, but I think 2026 it's an interesting time. People are becoming more broad-minded, I think. Like lines are being blurred in lots of areas, and I think spatially that's the case as well. Like blurring those lines between workspaces and third spaces is becoming fairly commonplace now, and I love it. I think it's great. I think it's really cool.
Thing. I'm like wildly like that. There's a lot of, there's podcasts on here where we've spoken about that. Even before I knew what that was, I could feel the third space. And before I start my third space webinar, where we're going to have to knock on the head now, like, because I can feel another thing coming up. Conversation, is where can we find you online? Where's the best place to track you down?
So right now I'm redoing my website, so that's probably is under construction. I have a Substack. It's called Untamed Strategy. I'm going to be giving a little bit more love to that this year, hopefully. You can email me, rose@roseradtke.co.uk, and I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram. Again, I'm not very good at it, but I pop my head in every now and again.
There we go. All right. Really appreciate that conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, if you go to the link in the show notes, there's all how to get hold of Rose, and go to our Substack, check out the David Bowie cat. That's for you, Ewan, in Contingent Works. And there's also links to all the at least 700 million events coming up. There's the Unreasonable Connection live and unleashed in Blue Garage in sunny Lewisham, and that's on the 24th. There is the, I always get this wrong, Co-working Alliance Summit, which is now in its 4th or 5th year, which is run by Hector and Ashley, and they gather all the people that run like local co-working assemblies and organizations and all the community stuff. Rose and I have been talking here. It's like the community managers summit. And in the LinkedIn group, we'll be talking about that and all the other things going on. So wherever you are in the world right now, be careful out there. It is a jungle. Say goodbye, Rose.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks for having me, Bernie.